You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. Hope you're having a great day out there, and thanks for dropping in and spending a little time here on Leadership Powered by Common Sense. I am Doug Thorpe, your host, and today we are going to have a little bit of an entrepreneurial refresher reminder. My guest is a gentleman who himself has been a successful, I guess you could call him a serial entrepreneur. He's done a number of things, principally in technology and medical device in that arena, but he's got some really solid fundamentals he wants to share with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Nick Schwarzrock. Did I say that right, Nick?
You did, Doug. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be on your show.
I should have asked you that in the green room just to confirm, but it's phonetically pretty obvious, I think. So, well, good. And real quick, Nick, if you will, recap your journey and your upbringing and background. I think it's a compelling reason for why you're the right guy for us to be talking to today.
Sure. Honored to be here. My name again, Nick Schwarzrock. I founded a company called Advanced Recovery, which I'm working on right now. I'm a husband and father first and foremost, and then a serial entrepreneur. I've got more than 20 years experience in med tech, med device, telehealth. I've got $2.4 billion worth of mergers, acquisitions, and layered integrations under my belt. And Doug and I were just chatting before this started about, how did I get here? How did I pick medical device? And, I think my story is probably similar to a lot. I grew up in a household where my father went to medical school and then decided he did not want to practice as a physician and got into the medical device and pharmaceutical arena. And I was one of those kids growing up that at 15, I was talking about stock options, warrants, IPOs, learning everything I could like a sponge from the household that I grew up in. And then my mother was a registered nurse, so I had a strong influence in the medical world. And my primary interests were medical and then technology. So when I was graduating from college, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was trying to decide between medical device and technology, thinking about moving out to Silicon Valley and getting involved in that. I often joke with people that I clearly made the wrong choice getting into medicine, just because technology, obviously is such a huge industry that exploded over the period of time that kind of came after my graduation. But I'm really excited about what I've done. I've certainly had more than my fair share of victories. I've met some really amazing people along the way and built a lot of good relationships and long-term friendships, and just excited to keep doing more of that. Love working with entrepreneurs.
Well, likewise, as we were talking in the green room beforehand, Nick's got some great ideas and some really solid, and it ties right here where we are, common sense solutions for entrepreneurs and business leaders. So let's dive right directly into that, Nick. Let's start with that financial management model that you have. You were spot on when we were talking that often people who either create a business or buy a business aren't really financial folks. They maybe have not had a chance to study or learn about income statements, financial statements, spreadsheets, and spreadsheets, yes, but models like a cash flow model or a KPI tracker or a lot of the different tools that you read about in the business books. But if you're one of those folks and you want to earnestly do well with your business, you're likely going to study some of that, buy some of those books, or even hire a coach. And you may end up just more confused than you were before you started. So you've got a great solution for that. Share that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. And great question. And I love talking about this. And I've seen similar things that you were just vocalizing, in that entrepreneurs and people who either start a business or buy a business. And I think this is relevant from my experience. Anything below $25 million in annualized revenue, I think this works for, and it sort of simplifies things. The accountants, they're going to still use their balance sheets and their P&L and their cash flow statements. But sometimes I think that those cause more, trouble than they're worth on a day-to-day, how are you running your business aspect. And it gets more complicated. If you're running on a cash basis, it simplifies things a lot, but most businesses of any kind of scale are usually run on an accrual basis. And so it just adds a layer of complexity. And I've found that sometimes when you just simplify and dumb things down to what you're really trying to do, it can make it easier for running just day to day. I'm not saying throw out those things and not review them on a monthly or quarterly or whatever makes sense for your business. But what I've developed with my team on the accounting and financial management side is sort of a simplified little cheat sheet, if you will, that I run my businesses on. And you just create a spreadsheet, and usually we just put this in something that we can share so that the people who are involved in financial management have access to it in real time. And it starts with your starting balance, and then it's got your anticipated income for the week. And then it's got your anticipated outflows for the week, or your expenses, and then what your ending balance is anticipated to be at the end of the week. And we build this out for 3 or 4 months at a time, week by week. And then each week we're truing up to that. So when we start the week, we know that we're anticipating starting here and ending here, and we track to that. And basically it's like a weekly scorecard of, okay, we thought we were going to bring in X and we actually brought in Y, and the delta is Z. And why was there that delta? And then same on the expense side. You should be able to run your expenses fairly predictably if you're running a reasonable AP system where you're kind of paying most people on net 30. You should be able to kind of lay out your expenses week to week and live to that and make yourself accountable to that. And it just makes a really simple system. And the beauty of this is, if you're growing your bank balance week to week, month to month, quarter to quarter, and you're being true to your plan, you're cash flow positive and you're making money, you're profitable. So it sort of takes, a lot of this accounting stuff in how to make money in business and how to be cash flow positive, and it just really simplifies it. And anybody who's interested in trying to set something like that up, I do a lot of mentoring, coaching, talking with entrepreneurs. I love interfacing with this community. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you kind of set it up, and I can give you like a template to start your work from and take a look at things. Always happy to help. I'm a big proponent of entrepreneurs. I think they are the heart and soul of the American economy and what makes America special from the economic marketplace powerhouse that we are.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those macro issues, but I also agree with you on the solution on the financial management. And I've got a gentleman on my team that I count as my financial guru. He's an ex-banker, as am I, and we kind of align on this. Similar to yours, he takes a very same approach, and he lays it out as a 13-week, rolling model, and doing exactly the same thing. You account for your expected inflow added to your starting balance in your bank, and then project those expenses. If you're doing payroll every week or every 2 weeks or however you do it, you should have an idea what that number is historically. You can plug that in. You can look at things like credit card payments and bank loan payments and vehicle payments, registration fees, all those things that are normal and ancillary expenses. if you're doing something like manufacturing or home service where you do have some supply cost of good type inventory to manage, that's a number, that's a line item you can track and plug in there on how frequently you want to replenish or how many jobs you have starting that you're going to invest and accumulate materials for those jobs. So all of that stuff goes into this model. And I like the extra point that you make. If your bottom line ending number continues to grow over time, that means you're making money. Just plain and simple. And you get away. I love that old joke as a banker. You call a customer and say, Nick, you've overdrawn your account, and Nick says, no, I didn't. I still have checks. You got to know what that cash flow is, because it's that cash is king sort of idea if you're in that realm. And I like your cutoff point at 25 million in topside revenue. And I would agree with you totally. I think if you're at that level or below, you're probably going to be able to manage all this more on a cash basis. And of course, we always yield to advice from a good CPA to tell you whether it ought to be accrual or not. But for most that I've seen, cash makes sense. A cash-based accounting makes sense, and it does simplify things in many, many ways. Yeah, I love that model, and I think that can clear away the confusion and the clutter of what else you might be thinking about. And as you allow yourself some time as an owner to learn more about the significance of movement on other elements of your financial reporting, you can let your accountant do that for you, either at month end or quarter end or year end, appropriately for tax purposes. But yeah, I love having that just single line of sight on the health of the business. And by the way, there's an old simple trick to think about. If your company can achieve a 15% growth year over year, what that's going to amount to is you will double the size of your business in just 5 years. It's simple math. It's simple math. 15% growth is the peg. And if you can do that consecutively for 5 years, your business will be double where you started 5 years ago. I learned it in the bank I worked for. That's what we did. And that was the way we drove our plan and our budgeting process. And we hit all the marks on a regular basis and kept it going and reeled off 64 consecutive quarters of earnings growth.
That is impressive. And I like exactly where you're at. One of my mentors early on taught me a simple thing of, you get into this projections and planning, which most of us are probably either completing or still in for next year, right? And he just, this mentor of mine just said, make it simple. Just target double-digit growth every year. And if you can do that, you're great. And so what I've implemented in my businesses is I shoot for, on the plan, 11%. So 1% growth each month, with 1 month where we don't hit it, and plan to overachieve, right? So the goal is to hit that 15 like you're talking about, but we plan for 11 and aim to overachieve, and usually we do. So I wholly subscribe to what you're talking about. And again, I'm all about make it super simple so it's easy. Don't get too elaborate with your planning either.
Yeah. Now, you also, Nick, shared with me another idea from a leadership standpoint of living core values. So walk us through your thought and experience on what it means to have a core value as a leader.
Great question. And this is another topic that I'm fairly passionate about. And it's sort of the origins of it come from, there's a school of thought that says in a leadership role, your primary focus should be at the revenue line, right? And then as things move away from the revenue line, they should get less and less important to you as they move steps away. And I guess my viewpoint is a little modification of that. And it started because I think where this originated was some of my experiences working in med tech and medical device and in medicine, where we're at the end of the day, we're taking care of a patient, and it sort of came out of sometimes there's something more important than making the dollar, right? And taking care of these patients, and that it's more than just business when you're in healthcare. And so what this sort of morphed into was when I established the company that I'm running right now, Advanced Recovery. We started out with a clear mission and vision statement. And sometimes I think that when you're starting a business, it's such a challenge, and you're trying to get so many pieces in line that some of this mission, vision, and core values sometimes gets either not put into the original mix, or it gets delayed until later. But we really set out our core values and our mission and vision. And when we did that with this organization, it occurred to me that core values are only core values if you prioritize them ahead of the revenue line, because you're inevitably going to be put in a situation where you have to choose between your core values and the revenue. And maybe, there's a lot of cases where you don't, where that's already in harmony, but there's always this situation, this one customer, this one patient, this one situation that pops up. And the only way that it's really a core value is if you prioritize it ahead of revenue, ahead of profitability. Sometimes you got to make decisions where it's, well, we lost money, but we did the right thing, or we learned a valuable lesson. And so that's kind of this concept that I have, that what your core values are because they're prioritized ahead of the revenue line, and sometimes you lose money by adhering to them.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful point because, as you said, and I've seen companies, I've even seen it in the Fortune 500 leaders that I've worked with, that you publish and you spend a lot of time and effort establishing a set of values, and typically they weave it with mission, vision, and values. They put all, that's kind of the triumvirate of a statement of what a company is going to be about. And yet, when you get into the blocking and tackling of running the business, to your point, inevitably there's always a situation, or maybe it's not a literal patient in the hospital, but it's a transaction that has to be done, and something about the transaction is going to violate that value set, but it looks good on paper. And so there's this tug of, well, do I live out the value, or do I, bank the dollar?
There's a really famous example of this that sort of demonstrates my point from my industry. And it's a Harvard business study on Johnson and Johnson back in the 80s, when there was an unfortunate situation. There was an individual who was poisoning Tylenol, and basically they didn't know where it was in the supply chain on the shelves. And the CEO of J&J made a decision to pull the Tylenol on every shelf across the country, knowing that it was going to cost them millions and millions of dollars. And it actually, what developed out of this was that safety seal. When you first open the package and that it's sealed, that's what came out of this. But they pulled the inventory off shelves everywhere across the country.
Right. I lived through that. I vividly remember that. And, it can be radical, but also another example of it. I was doing an interview recently, and the subject of Chick-fil-A in the restaurant chain came up. Well, one of their values was, Truett Cathy said, we're not going to be open on Sunday.
Yep.
Every restaurant everywhere will be closed. We're going to honor the day, and we're going to let our employees have their family time. And of course, investors and many said, "Oh my gosh, you're going to get crushed." You think about it. That's 52 days a year you're closed. Not counting other traditional holidays you might choose to be closed. Mm-hmm. That's 52 days a year. 1/7 of your time you're offline. But look what Chick-fil-A has done. They're top of class in most categories for what they do and how they do it, including revenue growth and profitability and opportunity for the franchisees that buy their stores. So holding true to a value can actually create a significant differentiator that people can gravitate to and respect and honor.
Great example. And I think, my experience at Chick-fil-A is that their employees are happier and more professional than any other fast food chain. So maybe that's part of it, that they know that they have Sundays off and can pay their families.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, I've done another. I've got an episode. I interviewed the gentleman that was their chief marketing officer that created the Covert Cow campaign, and so he had a lot of stories to tell. He was one of the early employees with reporting directly to Mr. Cathy and learning about this whole value-based ecosystem that they've created. And the employee attitude is far more than just being closed on Sunday. There's a whole lot that goes into the training and the enforcement of key values and key core, but it's largely to do with the notion of service. We're serving mankind. We're not just serving up a chicken sandwich, because you can get that in a lot of places, So there's much more to it than that. But the point being, it all goes back to this idea of, and I love your thinking on it. If you're really going to profess to follow a set of values, you have to set them above the revenue side, even the top line revenue. You have to let the revenue generate from the values as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, you've got a third area we talked about, which is a popular topic. And again, I've had a couple of recent episodes covering this, and that is innovation in business. So let's go to the guy that is, or person, I should say, that is operating one of these 25 million or less entrepreneurial enterprises. What does innovation mean to them?
Yeah, another topic that I'm very passionate about. I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I think he's an amazing innovator. I've read his biography twice, and to steal his quote, if you're not failing, you're not innovating enough. I firmly believe that. And so this concept of innovation kind of has two key aspects for me. One is that innovation is a mindset, and you really have to think about it like that. I think that innovation doesn't work very effectively if your innovation is limited to your product development, right? Where you're trying to specifically compartmentalize one spot in your business and in your brain, where you're going, okay, we're going to be really creative over here. To me, it's a mindset, and it happens across the business. So in businesses that I'm involved in and that I run, we're innovating in everything that we do. The way that we're interfacing with the teams that work with us, whether they're employees or independent contractors, how we're setting up our offices, how we're working with people remotely, how we collaborate, the digital infrastructure, so the information systems that we're using, innovating there. And then also innovating on product development, how we approach our customers, how we market to customers, sort of innovation as a, everything that you do in all encompassing, rather than saying we're going to be innovative right in this little segment over here. And I think that if you want to be successful in innovation, there's one key thing that I think is missing in at least in the United States, maybe the whole world, and in the business community. And that's this like fear of failure, that failure is like this like tar and feather that once it's on your skin, you can never wash it off. And you're pegged as the guy who failed. I think that failure is a key part of innovation. And I think that failure is a key part of success. And I think all three of those are intrinsically linked and they cannot be broken. And so I try and celebrate failures. I'm happy with any failure as long as we haven't done the same failure twice. So making, from a leadership perspective, it's got to be top down and bottom up, that everybody knows that failure is okay, and that, almost part of our goal is to fail, because failure is part of that roadmap to innovation and a roadmap to success. And you can't, win without losing first. So dispelling this mindset that when you fail, you're bad and you're bad forever. And that failure is somehow linked to losing, because it's not. It's linked to winning more than it is to losing.
Yeah. I don't think anybody in the modern business era has been associated with the notion of failing more than Jeff Bezos. There's a lot of street lore and there's a lot that's been written, and there are some that have tried to project that Bezos allegedly quoted, let's fail fast. Well, I have had the opportunity to interview a number of executives from Amazon who were living and breathing that environment, and they said that wasn't it at all. It was this notion of the relationship of failure. Don't fear failure, but rather be sure the one thing you got to do if you fail is to learn from it. Find the silver lining, find the piece of value that did survive the effort, and you see what you can discover. And in my book, and I don't mean that literally, I mean just in my thinking, one of the best examples of that is for those of us that have the infamous Amazon Alexa device at our house. That is a byproduct of Amazon's effort to conquer the cell phone market. They failed at being a cell phone provider, a mobile phone provider. But one of the features that was going to dominate their product was voice activation. And what does Alexa do? It's all voice activated. Well, that technology survived the phone effort and became our at-home device. And now, we can talk into the wind and things happen at our house. Now we can turn on lights, we can turn on the TV, we can change channels and set up streaming and order our food supplies and anything we want to. So it's an amazing example of something that did fail, but, turned in to be quite another opportunity.
That's an excellent example.
So, and I would imagine, back to your kind of niche space and industry, certainly in medical device, there's probably been a lot of ideas that didn't make it out of the laboratory along the way, or didn't make it through clinical trials, but maybe subsequently became something along the way.
Yeah, there's a number of products that, either came out of a failure or got repurposed from one thing to another and have been, blockbuster products. So certainly medicine is no stranger to that exact same thing. And I've worked on several projects where, we've had a market failure, and it's turned into, a market mainstay through, okay, let's problem solve and let's figure out where we made our misstep, and let's fix it, and let's go forward. And so I think not being afraid of failure is crucial, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You got to be innovating, and you got to be okay with making some mistakes, and getting back up is the most important part, and learning from it and not doing it again.
Let me ask you this, Nick. I'm going to kind of weave a couple of these ideas together and ask you a question. So if we think about the whole idea of core value statement and innovation, my question is, how do you explain that to a new employee, and how do you select people and onboard people that are going to help fulfill those visions of core value and innovation? How do you do it in your businesses?
Great question. I'm a firm believer. I think I'm a little old school, even though I'm in my 40s. I think leading by example is crucial. I don't have two sets of rules where there are rules for everybody else and rules that I follow. I try and lead by example, and I firmly believe in top down and bottom up at the same time. So I think it's embracing this yourself and then knowing and really living that it's okay for everybody else to do it and encourage them, even when things don't go your way. It's really easy when you're winning and everything's going great, to be like, let's follow these core values and let's do these things. But when things are hard and when you have a big setback and maybe you would have done things differently, or maybe it's a mistake that you wish that everybody could have seen ahead and avoided. That's the time where the rubber meets the road, if you will. And what your leadership as a leader in those instances, prove out the model or break the model. And and everybody's watching at those times, whether you know it or not. And so you've really got to know who you are and know what you really want to do and be committed to it and stick to your guns even when it's hard. And to me, that's what makes the difference. And that's what proves the model. And I think, with hiring, everybody's made mistakes with hiring. Hiring's hard. And hiring good people and keeping good people is a challenge. The one thing on hiring that I believe in, and you kind of touched on it on this failure stuff, is failing fast. If you make a mistake in hiring, I think it's about a 50-50 ownership aspect. You hired the wrong person, and maybe they don't have the skill sets that you need, but you also made a mistake in your hiring and you hired the wrong person. And I think it's important to remember that, and to be, making mistakes costs money. And so when you figure out that somebody's the wrong person, make a quick decision to separate. But also you need to remember your humanity and take care of those people, because they've made a significant commitment to join your organization, and a lot of their life hinges on this. So be humane, understand that you own part of that mistake, and do as much as you can to help that person move on to their next career journey, because the mistake isn't all in their lap.
Yeah, I like that. And the popular word I hear from my HR colleagues is, if we do anything in modern business, we hire too fast and fire too slow. Agreed. And if you can flip that script, if you can build a rigor about properly identifying, testing, or evaluating your hires before you commit, you may be able to improve your success rate. And I've said this before on this show, but I'll share it again. One of the companies that I built, we were having a horrific track record with hiring the right people. It was just dismal. And I took full ownership of it. And I finally determined that there was a way to have a practical exam, a literal test of the core of the work I needed done. And I could tell a candidate when we would be arranging the interview, we would tell them, oh, by the way, there's going to be a practical test on this thing here. And we would describe it. And a couple of things happened. I got like a 50% decline rate. People wouldn't even show up for the interview, which told me they knew they couldn't do the work. So they weren't going to waste their time or my time doing the interview, which was a win. That was a win right there. But for those that did show up and tried to somewhat fake it through the interview, which had been my history with these people knew the language of my industry and could talk a good game. But when I gave them the practical test, the way I had it set up, if they did the work, a qualified, experienced person could complete this test with success in about 20 minutes. And but for anybody that we would do the interview, then we'd give them the test. And if they stayed in the conference room for like an hour, I knew that they're not my person, or if they got finished too quickly. But even those that finished kind of on time, we still graded it, and we, could determine how well they performed. And when we started administering that test, our success in identifying the right people just went way up. We instead of being like 1 out of 3, we were like 9 out of 10. I mean, it was a massive shift in our success rate and the quality of the team we could build after that. So
another example of you innovating in your business to improve it, right? So I think that's great. What a great use of a tool to get a better outcome in such a critical area.
Yeah. Well, Nick, we're about up on time. Thank you so much for sitting in. I always like to ask if you could share contact info if people want to get a hold of you and learn more about your work and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick Schwarzrock. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm also on social media. And then my website, advancedrecover.com, has all my contact information. Feel free to reach out. Always happy to help and interface with people. And Doug, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor to be on here, and thank you to all your listeners. I hope that I provided some value that they can take to their real life businesses.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm sure you have. This has been a great episode. And folks, as always, we're going to have Nick's contact info in the show notes. Everything he reeled off there, we will capture for you and have with live links, so you can just click on and go straight out. But I do like to remind you at this point, we've got a video version of this show over on YouTube by the channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. And I want to put a plug in my coaching business. We have developed a offering that I call Vision 25. We are getting ready to launch into a new year. By the time this show airs, it will be the new year. And my Vision 25 is a package of 6 coaching sessions that can help you establish some vision, value, and culture thinking, some strategic planning, and walk away with a solid methodology on how to create for yourself a 100-day plan. I call it the perfect 100-day plan. And I'm happy to share that with you in an offering. But if you're interested in that, go over to my website, dougthorpe.com/vision25. You can get the links and see all the info that goes with that. But want to share that with you. It's a great offering, great way to really elevate yourself for the new year, and great things for you and your business. But for now, we're going to sign off, say goodbye. Go out there and make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.